We have a lot of listeners who are union workers or who are former union workers. So I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that Delaware is one of the few states with right to work protections. Now, a challenge of sorts is being launched here. Security guards posted at federal buildings across our state are soon going to cast ballots in what they call a deauthorization election. The goal is to strip officials of the Security, Police, and Fire Professionals of America union of their power to force guards to pay union dues as a condition of employment. Now, here to shed some light on this, we have National Right to Work Foundation Vice President Patrick Semmens. Thank you so much for joining us, Patrick.
MJ, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, can you explain to us exactly what the deauthorization election will entail and how it came about?
Sure. So what a deauthorization election is in states without right-to-work laws, like Delaware, so there are 26 right-to-work states in the country and then 24 that don't have right-to-work laws. In those states, an employee can be forced to pay money to a union under threat of termination. So the union official can say pay up or be fired, and if they don't pay, then they can lose their job. In right-to-work states, union dues payment is voluntary, so it's the choice of every worker. But in states where there are forced dues, the only way to get out of that is what's called a deauthorization election. And so that's what's taking place here, where this group of guards, for reasons we can get into, they're very upset with the union. They're upset with the union contract that they're currently under. And basically the only option they have is to take this deauthorization vote to at least strip the union officials of the forced dues requirement. And this will give them a little bit more accountability so that they're not at least stuck paying for a union contract that they believe is really undermines their interest.
Yeah, and in this case, apparently, they feel that a lot of this was not done openly, right? That decisions were made without their knowledge, that they were sort of kept in the dark. Isn't that part of what they're upset about?
Yeah, exactly. So they work for GXC, which is a contractor that provides security at federal buildings spread out across the state of Delaware. And unbeknownst to these workers, the union, SPFPA, entered into a contract with GXC, and they weren't told about it. And then only when they found out that the union had ratified this contract, they looked at it and they said, this is an awful contract. We want nothing to do with this. But there's nothing they could do about it at that point. There's a federal rule created by the National Labor Relations Board, which is what all this federal law is sort of under, that says once a union contract is in place, workers can't get rid of the union for up to 3 years. So they're currently trapped under this contract that they oppose for 3 entire years. But the only option they do have is to at least get rid of the forced dues clause. And I think they're hoping that maybe this, if enough people cut off dues, if they win this vote, maybe the union will leave. But either way, at least they won't be stuck paying for a contract that was entered into in secret, and that they think is just not up to snuff for what they should be able to get.
So actually, if they're unsuccessful, well, let's say they're successful with this, would the union then, you said they might just leave, but if not, would they have the complete 3 years, or has the clock already started running?
So this vote was prompted by the contract being entered into. So that just happened, I think, in the last couple months. So most of that 3 years would still remain, which is why they're so adamant that we need to find another way. And their thinking is, look, if we can end the forced dues clause through this vote, then everyone cuts off their dues. Maybe the union say it's not worth it to keep this forced contract on these people. Maybe they'll just go away. But that's unfortunately, from these workers' perspective, that's the union's decision. They can stay or they can leave. And if they stay, these workers are stuck under this contract the entire time. And it's one of many problems with federal labor law that a union can get in power, can trap people in many states under forced dues, and there's very little that can be done about it. this case really illustrates that problem.
And sure, and I'm sure it's a struggle in the sense of getting enough people on board. In this case, do you feel it's an advantage that the people who would be asked to vote on this are from throughout the state as opposed to just concentrated in one region, or is that a disadvantage?
Well, it could be a disadvantage. They are doing it over a mail ballot, which is not the preferred method. But when they're spread out, that's often how the NLRB handles these situations. But we do know that a majority signed the petition asking for the vote. So as long as that majority follows through and gets their votes in, they should be successful. The problem, and we know from National Labor Relations Board's mail-in voting in general, is that it often suppresses turnout. And these workers do need to have an actual majority of all the employees, so all eligible voters, a majority need to vote to deauthorize. So it's not just a majority of those who voted, it's actually a majority of all the workers in this unit. So that is a bit of a hurdle, and it's one of the ways that these votes tend to favor the union, because the union can just say, hey, if you don't vote, it counts as a vote to keep the forced dues clause intact. But we'll see. Certainly they're motivated. It's not an easy task to go get the petition signatures, especially when you're this spread out, and they did succeed in doing that. So that suggests these workers are very upset with the current situation, that they're stuck paying dues as union that kind of betrayed them with this secret deal. And so hopefully they'll get the chance to follow through and end this forced dues situation.
So I think you mentioned that there are 24 states currently that are in this situation, no right-to-work laws. Can you give us just a little bit of history? So 26 states, I gather, overturned that sort of thing. What is the history? How long has it taken, and is this something that's gaining momentum? Are there efforts going on in other states at this moment?
Yeah, the way it works is federal law authorizes forced union dues. And so under federal law, that's the default in every single state. But in the Taft-Hartley amendment to the National Labor Relations Act, which was passed in the late 40s, states could then pass right-to-work laws and protect workers against forced dues. And so 26 states have done that. It was 22 as of a little over a decade ago, so there has been some growth in that in recent years. But, it's a tough process. Union officials have a lot of political influence, and even though we know right-to-work laws are very popular, polls always show 70, 80% support among Americans for right-to-work, which, again, doesn't stop anyone from paying dues if they choose to. It just says that those payments are voluntary. But, there is a lot of, and I think Delaware is an example of this, there's a lot of states where union officials have an outsized influence, in large part because of their forced dues powers, and they use that influence to protect and to make sure that workers cannot opt out of union payments through the passage of a right-to-work law.
Well, tell us a little bit about your group, the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation.
Yeah, so we specialize in situations just like this. The National Right to Work Foundation has 19 staff attorneys. They represent employees, workers only. We don't represent companies. We don't represent unions. We represent individual employees who've had their rights violated by any number of forms of forced unionism abuse. So it could be situations helping workers get votes, vote to remove the union entirely, a deauthorization vote to end forced dues. It could be we've had workers who we've defended who've been physically assaulted by union officials. We've had class action lawsuits for groups of tens of thousands of workers who've had dues taken in violation of their constitutional rights. Foundation staff attorneys have argued over a dozen cases at the U.S. Supreme Court. We have a number of major victories there. And so we offer free legal aid to employees in these types of situations. And so if they think that they want to learn a little more about their rights and perhaps talk to an attorney free of charge, decide if maybe there's something they can do to protect their rights. They can find us at nrtw.org online, or they can call 1-800-336-3600. But yeah, we only represent employees in these types of situations because, union officials have highly paid lawyers, and they use forced dues to fund those lawyers. And the only way employees can really stand up for their rights is through a charitable organization like ours that gives them free legal aid.
Patrick, when is this vote?
So the vote is scheduled to begin July 2nd, but it is a mail ballot, so they got a couple weeks, I believe it is, to get their ballots and then send them back to the NLRB, which will then count them. But those will be sent out very soon.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and getting the word out. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much, MJ.
Thank you.